5 minutes. I'm going to put on a timer and a song, and we'll get settled in. So the timer's coming up. All right, and we'll start. Put on the music. Thanks for being here, you guys. I'd love to know who's here. If you just want to say your name and where you are in the world, that would be awesome. everybody. How are you doing today? I'm doing quite well. Got started a few minutes late. Had to go get my dog. She ran off down the street. Got out of the yard. But here we are. I'm super excited to dive in. Let me just get everything ready to go on my end. Whoops. All right. Oh, need to kill the timer. Here we go. Good. So welcome everybody. Welcome to Brand Alchemy. This is our weekly deep dive into the art of brand development and also personal development, using branding as a means for personal development, hence the name Brand Alchemy. So, the topic of today's episode is audience. So, who are we serving? You know, who is it at the center of our brand that we're engaging with? So just a little bit of a recap. The Brand Alchemy process is a cycle, and it's a 4-phase cycle. So this entire month, January, has been focused on the first phase of the seed, and each episode has been focused on a different aspect of the seed as such. So we started with vision. Last week we did essence, and now we're working on audience, and next week will be action. So just to do a recap of what's happened thus far, and to show you what each of these components actually looks like within a brand strategy. So we'll start with vision, and this is the vision that I came up with for myself this last week or two. And so I'd like to share this. So my vision for everything that I'm doing right now, for this Andy Freeland brand, the vision at this present moment is a community of creative, soulful beings who have embodied their higher self and purpose, giving them the power and ability to evoke global transformation and co-create a better reality for all. So it's a bit lengthy, and I'm in the process of refining it, but everything that I wanted to say is in it, and now it's just a matter of distilling that down so it's even more concise, which is something I'll be working on over the next couple weeks as we finalize the whole seed here. So that covers vision. You know, ultimately, where are you headed? What's the end game here? So next we've got essence, and in essence is composed of archetypes and attributes. So essence is really answering the question of who am I, right? What are you as an individual bringing to your brand, right? What makes it unique? So last week was all focused on this, and we went into archetypes and attributes. So to start with archetypes, here's the Brand Alchemy archetype wheel that's based on the zodiac. I'm not going to get into what any of this means because that's all in last week's episode. But the result is that we figure out what our primary and secondary archetypes are for our brand. And in the case of my brand, the ones that I've landed on and that resonate with me as Scorpio, the Scorpio archetype or sign as the primary, and Sagittarius and Aquarius as the secondary. And to make it even more useful, because I mean, unless you know what each of these mean, it doesn't really mean anything. So one thing that I suggest we do is instead of just going with the zodiacal name, that we pick one of the sub-archetypes of each of those signs. So in my case, my primary is the alchemist, secondary philosopher, secondary, and then the other secondary is the revolutionary, which are all expressions of these three zodiacal archetypes. So that's it the archetypes thing is really quite simple. It's easy to figure out what your archetypes are, just at least to start working with one or a few. But you can go really deep into what those mean. And if you want to learn more, check out episode 3. So the next thing is attributes. And this is essentially just breaking down your brand essence into just a series of words. So this is what my attributes looks like. And the green ones that got highlighted were the top one for each category. So for me, my culture, my primary way I describe my culture is transformative. The way I describe my audience is powerful creators. The way I describe my voice is soulful. The way I describe the feeling that I invoke in others, the way other people feel after interaction with me, or the way I'd like them to feel, is grounded. And then the tangible impact that I have on the world or on those that I work with is deeper creative growth. And lastly, the X factor, which is sort of like, what's your secret sauce? What's your unique spin on things that can't really be easily copied or duplicated? For me, my X factor is practical alchemy. So that's what really takes my work with branding and makes it unique and unlike anything that exists as far as I'm aware of. So then we can take all these top attributes and weave them together into a brand statement, utilizing this handy dandy little template, kind of like a Mad Lib. So when I put all those together, like so, then what results is the statement: Andy Freeland provides experiences and education for powerful creators in a transformative environment with a soulful voice, helping them be grounded and break through to deeper creativity with the X factor of practical alchemy. So this is something that you could do this whole exercise in a matter of an hour and then have your brand statement, which is, it's not like you wouldn't want to put this on your website necessarily, but it's such a great tool to get clarity fast. So once I put all these things together, we find our essence, which again is the statement I just read, the X factor, and the archetypes, which is alchemist, explorer, revolutionary. So those things all together provide us with essence. So we've got vision and essence. So now we need to work on audience, which is what today is all about. So know thy audience. The mantra of last week was know thyself. And this is something that Socrates said. And that really, knowing thyself is such an important thing. So on the flip side of that, we also need to understand and know our audience, the people that we're talking to, the people that we create for. So what is an audience? I guess is a really good first place to start, is answering the question of what exactly is an audience. So the first place to start with that is that the root of the word, there's a relationship between audience and audio, right? So audio is sound. It could be just noisy kind of sounds. It could be somebody talking, but it's basically some sort of sound that's being transmitted. So an audience is basically those who are receiving the sound or listening to the sound. So really, your audience is just those who are listening. Or even more specifically, just those who are paying attention. And we do indeed pay with our attention. Attention, in my opinion, is the most valuable asset that we have as creators and brands. So our audience, it's not just a amorphous, faceless mass of people like we see here in this image, like a crowd. I mean, sure, it could be that, and in many cases it is that, but our audience is made up of individuals, and each of these individuals has hopes, dreams, challenges, fears. Everybody has their own reason for engaging with what you do or just for doing what they do. But ultimately, our audience, the people that are paying attention to us, they're just fellow travelers on the path, right? They're headed somewhere, you're headed somewhere, you have a brand about it, whatever that thing is, and they might be like, hey, I'm going to that same place, let's go together. So as a brand, that's kind of what we're asking people to do, is that for me personally, I'm on a trajectory. I'm on this journey, this mission of creating this brand for myself, sharing everything that I've learned over the past 10 years about brand development and alchemy and creativity and personal development. And I'm walking the path, right? And I'm looking for others, calling others in who are on a similar path that would like to walk on the path with me. And I know that I have a lot of wisdom and experience and tools and techniques and things that can be very helpful to other people that are on a similar path as me. So it's a relationship. It's also, it's an audience is really, it's a community. And I think that a really key thing with a strong audience, or with an engaged audience, is that there's a sense of growing together. There's a sense of togetherness, a sense of community. And I think that as creators, and as anybody that's trying to build an audience, I think it's actually a really good idea to think of it in terms of building community rather than an audience, because it's not about just transmitting our message and having people like hear it. It's not a broadcast, right? It's a conversation. So we're all growing together. And we're also co-creators, right? So when we have a deep connection with our audience, then that creates a deeper bond, right? And it takes time, and it takes empathy, and it developing an audience of people that really truly care, that are really invested in what you're doing, and there's a clear reason for them to be there. Beneath the surface, there's a deeper bond that's happening, and it strengthens over time. So Seth Godin says, people like us do things like this. This is a really simple statement, but it has a lot of value in it. So what he's saying here is that as humans, there's no real reason why we do things besides the fact that we just tend to do things that other people do around us, right? It's kind of like, all these customs and traditions that we have as cultures and people, they're all pretty arbitrary when you really get down to it. The reason they work is just because there's a sense of togetherness and community around whatever that thing is. So, when you have a following, an audience, then there's this sense of, we're all people like us doing things like this. So in using myself as an example, right? There's a certain type of person that is going to resonate with my work here and what we're doing. And that's who it's for, right? And we all tend to be very similar in many, many ways, because we're just people like us doing things like this. And it doesn't really matter who you are or what you do, that's going to be true. Because humans, we're not rational beings, we're emotional beings. And all of our decisions, even though we think they're perfectly rational, they don't really make any sense when you get down to it. Monkey see, monkey do, basically. So resonance is a really, really key thing when it comes to building an audience and engaging with an audience. So resonance is a very interesting thing. So what resonance is basically, so we have a tuning fork here, right? And if I hit the tuning fork, it's going to emit a frequency, a tone, so to speak. And that's not really anything incredible in it of itself. But when you put another tuning fork that has the same, that's of the same frequency, right? And you ring one tuning fork and you put it next to another tuning fork, what's going to happen is that they're going to both start vibrating. And that's something that happens called sympathy, which is basically just both kind of feeling the same thing, right? And this is such a key thing, and the power of resonance is really clearly illustrated when you think about like a wine glass, right? And the whole like making the wine glass sing, and the more the louder that it sings, it starts to vibrate, and it starts to build so much of a force that eventually it has no other choice but to just explode, because of that amount of power just has nowhere else to go. So even though this is a destructive idea or concept, when you really think about it, it's just clearly illustrating the power of resonance, which is to say it's just putting out a frequency, and then someone else is saying, yes, that resonates with me, right? And then there's a feedback loop that happens where it basically feeds back in and strengthens the frequency that you're emitting. So in a relationship between creator and audience, we put things out, and that's our frequency. And then the things that our audience resonates with are the, if we feed that back in and start doing more of that stuff, we're going to create more resonance, and it's going to build in that energy. Hopefully it won't turn into this sort of situation though, with the wine glass breaking. So a key thing about resonance, again, we said frequency, right? And this is an interesting concept. I've been thinking much about how really it comes down to frequency, tone, and resonance, which are very musical, kind of audio related things, but they are directly applicable to what we're talking about here. So your frequency, there's a lot of lenses through which we could look at this, but one way I'm looking at it is that your frequency is simply it's like what you put out, right? Like every time you put something out into the world that can be experienced, that's that's one of these little waves in the overall frequency. And so like a content schedule, right, of like what you create, let's say you put out something every single day, that's your frequency, is that daily thing that's being put out. If you're a musician, even you could even say that every time your music is listened to is kind of part of that frequency, even if you're not actively like putting something out. But basically, in order for there to be signal at all, there needs to be a frequency, right? No frequency, no signal. So frequency requires consistency, and I mean, it's in the word itself, frequent, right? To be frequent, frequency, consistent. So if that's like your rhythm of communications and engagements with your audience, then like your tone is the way that you color that frequency, the way that you it's kind of like what exactly are you putting out in that frequency, if that makes sense. And that's your tone. So overall, everything, resonance, frequency, tone, all those things together kind of creates your vibration, so to speak. I really like thinking about it in these terms. So how do we build an audience, right? And I think that like as creators and as business owners, brands, it's easy to think that we need to just grow as big as we possibly can. The more the merrier, right? The more fans, the better. And while that is mostly true, it's not entirely true. And like what we actually need as far as a fan base and what we think that we need are oftentimes two very, very different things. So Kevin Kelly, who I believe he started Wired magazine, he wrote an article that was extremely popular, called 1,000 True Fans. And the idea with this concept of 1,000 true fans is that all that we really need, whether we're an artist, an entrepreneur, a brand, a business, whatever it might be, all that we really need is 1,000 true fans to have a very successful, lucrative brand, business, whatever it might be. That's it. So the question is, well, what is that? What is a true fan then, right? So a true fan is the type of person that is going to consume everything that you create, right? They're just all in. You've created at that, a true fan is earned through resonance, right? It's about creating as much resonance as possible, and there comes to be a point where the identification of the fan member to whatever it is that you're doing, to the brand, is so deep that it's kind of like they're inseparable, right? So I don't even think that this number is even really true. I feel like this article or this idea was first introduced, I think like over 10 years ago, and with the way things are nowadays, I feel like that the number is probably closer to like 100, because there's no limit to ways that we can create products and You know, I think that this idea, 1,000 true fans, is true if you're like an author that only sells books, or a musician that only sells, you know, albums or in concerts, this sort of thing. But if you're into, you know, if you are into creating courses and these sort of alternative types of media, this number can go a lot lower because the, you know, the price tag of what you're creating is higher. So as an example of what happens when you've got true fans versus just superficial fans that, you know, they might give you a like, but that's about it. You know, it's kind of like, just because you have 1,000 followers on Facebook does not mean you have really any true fans, right? Because true fans don't care what, you know, your true fans, they're going to find you wherever you are, right? Doesn't matter what platform. You could delete all your accounts and go on some new platform and they'd probably find you real quick. So as an example of true fans, or a situation of true fans, the Grateful Dead is really at the top of the list for me. So the Grateful Dead actually, they invented a lot of the modern day marketing techniques that are used today in Silicon Valley and also just in the marketing industry. Like the idea of the mailing list, like I don't know, I wouldn't say they came up with that, but they were basically doing what a mailing list is like back in the 70s, right? Where instead of a mailing list, it was like they would actually mail you stuff to your house. So interesting thing about the Grateful Dead is that they only had one hit record. They barely had any radio airplay at all. They were basically just, to the masses, they were unknown, right? So they weren't the typical idea of success in the sense that they, you know, winning platinum records and, you know, being on MTV and all that kind of stuff. So they didn't have any of those accolades, but they were extremely successful, like even more successful than a lot of the people that were on the radio. So why is that? Why were they so successful? And I'll share some stats as to like just how successful they were here soon. You know, this is a picture of one of the parking lots on a Grateful Dead tour. So here's the thing: is that the Grateful Dead understood the value of culture, right? The value of community, and they put their community at the center of their entire brand, right? And they created a culture of deadheads, as they're called. And you know, I think we all are familiar with you know, that type of person, a deadhead, you know, somebody that's a Grateful Dead fan. It's really easy to spot them, right? And there's a sort of similarity, which kind of goes back to that idea of people like us do things like this, right? When we're part of a culture, we follow suit with that culture in some way. So here's that logo. I mean, we've all seen this. And here's the thing: is that this culture, this deadhead culture, did not die with the Grateful Dead, right? It's still alive and well, right? There's still deadheads. There's entire businesses built around this brand, right? Of just kind of selling their own flavor of Grateful Dead merch, right? Even further, I wonder what the number is of how many Grateful Dead cover bands there are in existence. It's got to be thousands of them. I mean, just in Asheville alone, pretty much you look at any poster board wall in Asheville, and I guarantee you'll probably see like 3 or 4 posters that are like different Grateful Dead cover bands, and they play multiple times a week. It's insane that a band that died, you know, pretty much died decades ago, or at least I think they died, in the 90s was basically the end of it, and it's still just such a powerful force. So they really put their fans at the center of everything. So here's a few interesting stats. So remember, they didn't really do anything that made them famous. They weren't successful by the standard definition of it. But what they did do is they sold 23 million tickets roughly directly to fans. So that's one thing that they did, is that they sold everything direct to fans. It was a family affair, so to speak. There was no middlemen. So out of those 23 million tickets approximately that they sold directly to fans, they generated in their career about $386 million in ticket revenue. And they performed about 2,314 shows. That's crazy. But by putting their fans first and truly understanding them and creating culture around them, they were able to be what they become. And I think that there's a lot that we can learn from what they did and follow suit. So here's the thing. 1,000 true fans, that's all good, but that's still like a high number. And, you know, especially when we're just starting out, it's like, you know, just getting 100 fans is, you know, it can be really hard. So here's the truth, is that we don't need to start with 1,000. We don't need to start with 100. All we really need to start making progress and to start to make headway in making our, you know, building our brand, we just need 10. All we need is just 10 people that resonate enough with what we do to want to show up, to care, right? And the best way to do that is personally, you know, I feel like a lot of times we have this idea that, or this feeling that we're kind of just talking to a faceless mass of people. You know, it's like getting on Facebook or something and maybe going live or writing something, and we're just like imagining this mass of people that may or may not be listening. And so the problem with that is that we're not really talking to anybody, and it's really hard when we're not talking to anybody in particular to create resonance. So what I've discovered is that it's about speaking to one person, even when we're speaking to a group. And when we do that, then we can actually create resonance. So if we can get just 10 people to actually listen and be enrolled with what we're doing, then we know we're on to something. If we can't get 10 people to pay attention, then we either need to change what we're doing or we need to change how we're talking about it, right? So how do we do this? Like how do we get our first 10 true fans, right? How do we create that resonance? And I believe that it starts with empathy. And this is the ability to feel and understand somebody, right? It doesn't even mean that we take on their baggage or anything like that. It simply means that we just understand them on a deeply human level. We understand their needs, their hopes, their dreams. You know, when we have a really good friend that we can confide in, like there's empathy there. So how do we do this? Like, how do we create empathy with strangers, right? Which is essentially what we're doing when we're building an audience. And what we need to do is we need to understand them, and the best way to do that is to walk in their shoes. So there's a lot of ways that we can do this, a lot of tools out there in the wild. One way to sort of walk in somebody's shoes is to create an empathy map. And this is a really, really useful tool, especially when we're just exploring and getting to know our audience, right? Here's the thing, is the better we understand and know our audience, the better we can serve them, the more resonant our messaging is going to be in communications. Everything is just going to be better through that understanding. So this is an empathy map. It's really quite simple, but I'll break it down and show you how this works. So basically at the center is the audience member, right? Whoever that might be, a specific person. I'm going to show you next how we can clarify who our audience members are. So audience member in the middle. So that person is at the center of this. They've got thoughts and emotions, right? They have words and deeds, actions. They hear things in their reality, right? And they see things. They've got challenges, and they've also got desires. And all of these things together can help us really understand them on a human level. So we'll start at the top with thoughts and emotions. So what we're looking for here is just keywords. This doesn't need to be complicated. We just jot down a few words or phrases that, make sense. And also the thing is that oftentimes we're just making this up and just using our intuition, using whatever experience and knowledge and feedback that we have about our audience or our intended audience. And we just work with what we got. So thoughts and emotions includes things like core beliefs, right? What are their thought patterns? What are their values? What are their feelings? How do they feel about themselves? You know what I mean? Like all these sort of things. What is their internal landscape like? That's what this whole quadrant's all about. And all we're looking for here is just simple words and phrases. So on the flip side to what's their internal landscape, which is thoughts and emotions. What's their external their words and their actions, right? Which is to say it's their appearance, their behavior, their public persona, and their message, like what they're saying. What are the words that come out of their mouth in the shared reality. So the dynamic between these two is the thoughts and the emotions are their internal landscape, and then the words and actions are kind of their external behavior. So what they're hearing is basically, what is the outside world telling them, right? What do others around them tell them, right? What is their boss saying to them, their partners? Who are they influenced by, right? What do they listen to? What podcasts do they listen to? In what ways are they being influenced, right? So that's hearing with the ears, and then similar to that is sight. So like, what do they see? What is their environment? What brands do they follow? Who do they spend time with? These sort of things. So those things those four of their internal landscape of thoughts and emotions, their words and actions, their hearing and their sight, that gives us a really good a beginning of the map. So then we finish things off by addressing their challenges and their desires, right? So it's kind of like what are the immediate pains that they're having? Their pains, their struggles, their fears, their obstacles. And on the flip side, what are their desires? Like what are their dreams, their visions, their hopes, their aspirations? And there's a relationship between these two. It's kind of like, where do they ultimately want to go in their life, and what's holding them back? So all these things together can really help us understand our audience in a deeper way. So the next tool that we're going to really actually dig into here is creating audience profiles, which kind of takes us in a bit of a different direction. So the way that we start with profiles is by identifying what is our audience map, which is to say, what are the main characters or people that are in our audience? And so we start with an audience map, right? So the way that I learned how to do this is basically this map is really, really geared and really, really suitable for personal branding, right? Because it is personal to you. So in the center is you, and then there's a past version of yourself, future version of yourself, a foundational figure, and an admirational figure. So this works really well if you're an individual or an artist or something like that. If you are like a business brand, so to speak, then you could tweak it to be more like this. So say it's not just you, but you have an organization. So then in the center here is your leadership, which is kind of like, who is at the center of your brand, a spokesperson, that type of a thing. Who is the voice of your brand, basically. And then current customers here on the left, ideal customers here on the right, industry influencers on the top, and then supporters on the bottom. So I'm going to use myself as an example to show how this all works. So I went with this one, and here's my kind of filled out audience map, and we're going to break this all down so that you'll see how this works. So I'm here at the center, and the way that we start, I like to start with the audience map and then just basically create an archetype name to describe each one of these audience members, and also find an image. So like I'm just, I just found random images online for all these except for myself. So I'm saying here that my past self is this visionary artist, or even like my previous way the first way I termed this was the starving artist, but I didn't really want to have things in the negative like that. So I went with visionary artist. And then where I'm headed in the future, this one's been tweaking and changing. Right now I went with philosopher. It's still not quite right. So I just want to say that this is an ongoing evolution of a process, right? It's not like we just figure out who our audience is at the beginning, we're done. We keep learning and feeding back into it and learning more and refining as we go. But really what this person is kind of a philosopher, a writer, author, a thinker, basically. That's what they do. They think for a living, essentially. Think and write. And I would like to be going more in that direction. So then the foundation is kind of like what audience member or persona or type of person has been like a rock for me, something that's just always kind of been there to help me grow, and identified this as being this archetype of powerful creators, right? I've done a lot of collaborations over the years, and they're generally with fellow powerful creators, and those collaborations have always brought a ton of value to me. So that's a foundational audience member for me. And then lastly is the admiration. So this is just like somebody that I look up to within the context of my brand, and this is the transformational facilitator. So we're gonna dig into each of these, and what we want to do is to create a audience persona for each one of these audience members. So what does the persona look like? It looks like this, super simple. So we just pick an image, we give them a title or a name, an archetype name. So that's kind of like what we had back here. The visionary artist, the brand alchemist, the philosopher, all these things. These are archetype names. And just for clarity, this isn't necessarily referring to the brand archetype system that we covered in the last episode, but it could. If you wanted to figure out your audience member archetype, that's definitely a valuable thing to do. So anyways, we give them a name, a first and last name, and then there's these 4 quadrants. And the way that I like to do this is basically to set a timer, and then within the timer, just come up with as many little line items that you can come up with in that time. And again, we're just making it up here. So a lot of times, if we've been in the game for a while, then we do have experience with our audience and we do know them. And so it's going to be easier to just get to the root of it. But if you're just starting out, then there's going to be a lot of guesswork, and that's totally fine. Because again, this isn't a one and done thing. This should be revisited frequently. So anyways, the exercise, the way to do this is I like to just do 5 minutes, set a timer for 5 minutes, and then come up with many ideas as I can for each of these categories. So basics is just like basic demographic data, like where do they live, what do they do for a living, are they married, just like really basic info, kind of a profile snapshot. And then journey is like where are they coming from and where are they going? Where are they coming from? Where are they going? Kind of what is their journey? And then what do they need, right? So this journey brings them to the present of like, okay, here they are, here we are, we're present in reality. What do they need to continue their journey? Bump down, we write as many needs as we can. And then those needs, each need, we can create a suitable solution that's within the context of whatever it is that we do. So 5 minutes for each, boom, boom, boom. And then when that's all done, then we've got something like this. So this is me. This is my profile. And since I did this, like I did this one about 2 2 or 3 months ago. It's already been tweaking and changing, which is just the nature of things. But why don't we go through it real quick? So this is my present self. And I think it's important to include yourself because it'll help you understand yourself better. And, you are one of your audience members, right? Okay, so, that's not right anymore. I'm not 31 anymore. So basics. 32, a male, I live in Asheville. I'm making about 50K a year. I'm a designer and strategist, a musician and a DJ, an event producer, and married, and I had a baby on the way when I made this. So this was in September, I think. And I'm going to be refining this week with the collab group, which we'll be talking about later. So my journey is that I worked for my family concrete business. I got burnt out, quit the business, moved to Hawaii with my partner at the time, which is my now wife. I produced, facilitated, and or performed at hundreds of events in my time at Hawaii. Various dances, ecstatic dances, retreats, festivals, all sorts of stuff. Along the way, I created Audio Alchemy and the Grady Course Adventure, and also had been running a freelance design and strategy. I was a freelance designer and strategist, and at this time, I was kind of going into I was headed towards an agency model, which has now shifted and is now become focusing on my personal brand. So what do I need? A lot of these needs are all pretty much still relevant. So I need a dream team and a community. I need focus and discipline, motivation, support, guidance, connections and networking, better clients, and passive income. And then how do I get those? So how could I get my dream team and community? Well, my current solution for that is the Brand Alchemy collab, which is exactly my dream team and community. And we meet every Tuesday and apply what we are talking about here on these Wednesday classes. We actually do the work together in a community setting. It's amazing. So I need focus and discipline, right? So solution, work schedule. Well, I did that and it's working. Motivation, clear vision. I've got that down and it's motivating. I need support, solutions, mastermind. That's the Brand Alchemy collab, and it's happening, right? It's already become real, and it is giving me exactly what I thought it would give me. Needs, guidance, right? So a solution is coaching. So I have not yet made that happen, but I know who I want to work with when I'm ready for that. So other needs is connections and networking, right? So I need to more networking, and the solution is CRM, which stands for customer relationship management, I believe, but it's basically just a way to manage relationships at scale. So I need relationship management, and I'm still working on making that happen. I also need better clients. So the solution for that is to create my new website, a new capabilities deck, and some amazing case studies, all which I'm working on right now. And then lastly is passive income, and then a DIYC course. So that actually got canned because I'm doing all of this for free through these classes, and finding other ways to make money. So that's me, right? That's my profile. So next up on the list this is my past self, the visionary artist. So Justin Thomas, again, these are just not real people. They might be based on real people. I mean, I think in each one of these that I created, I had somebody in my mind that it was based on, which is really, really helpful. So this guy is 27. He's in the Bay Area. You know, he's just barely scraping by. He's single. He's an artist and a music producer. And his journey is that he's always been a creative, And he's also constantly had struggles with income and sustainability. You know, he's beginning to gain notoriety for his art and music. Like he's a budding artist, and you know, starting to get good bookings and things like that. And he also interned at a successful design company, so he's also a designer as well. And he loves working in teams, and he's just a multidisciplinary person. You know, he's just a really talented individual. So what does he need? He needs stable income and a way to earn money remotely. He needs a strong brand and marketing for his creative pursuits. He also needs bookings, right? He needs more bookings. He also needs networking and connections. He needs inspiration, and he needs to recharge regularly. He needs sustainability and energy, focus and flow, growth and support. And so I also want to point out that it's really, really good to highlight the top 3 needs and corresponding solutions. Because the needs and the solutions is really where it's where you and your audience meet, right? So some solutions, right? So he needs remote work and stable income. So he needs some sort of stable part-time work to like keep his boat floating while he's building his brand. He also needs better bookings, so he needs a really good agent. And then this other bolded one is he needs sustainability and energy. So he needs to like get on board with some positive habits and routines, and do some lifestyle design. So that's Justin Thomas. So let's go to David French, the powerful creator. So this is my like foundational foundational persona. So basics with him: 42 years old, making about 60K. Also just a very talented, multidisciplinary sort of person. He's a designer, a strategist, a musician, the whole bit. The journey is he worked for an agency once upon a time, and has his hands in many creative pots, so to speak. He's also really big into healing and wellness, and is trying to figure out like what to do next. He's in transition, and super talented and motivated, responsible, get shit done. Right? He's in transition. He's looking for a focus to just go all in on. So what he needs right now is that he needs something inspiring to work on, and he also needs to be making money. Collaboration as well. So a solution for that is to work in some sort of a team environment, or even community. So when I did this before, like I said, in my mind, I was kind of going down the road of going more into the agency business model. And so that's why a lot of this is kind of, my solutions are kind of from that angle, because that was something I was creating that, I could have given this guy the opportunity to work with me in that way. But as I've been going through this process, I'm realizing that's actually not the path I want to go down. So I'd rather, in the case of him, what I'd rather do is like solutions is some sort of, personal brand framework or something. So, what I would say too, I would just say let's just put Brand Alchemy. Brand Alchemy. He needs Brand Alchemy. And for collaboration, he needs to work in a team, needs community, and one thing that I'm doing there is the collab. And funnily enough, there's somebody in the collab that really fits this persona really well. So it's funny how it all works out like that. So then lastly, the long-term plan is he needs clear vision and action. And that's part of the whole Brand Alchemy process, right? So he's going to get that through that. Here's some secondary bits that are good, but really we want to focus on the top 3. Okay, so next up we'll do the transformational facilitator, Jennifer Hall. So she is 35 years old. She's she's an author, speaker, podcaster, yogi, and like her main thing is she leads these movement workshops and facilitates these kind of movement workshops and ecstatic dances and those kind of things. She's also has 2 kids. So her journey is that she studied yoga and philosophy. She's really well educated. She ended up getting married, having kids, and her whole MO is like she really wants to free the people. She's really big into this idea of liberation, and she sees a lot of pain and suffering, and she sees a lot of things around her that just don't need to persist, and she sees ways that she can help liberate. So she's really all about dance and movement, and music is also a big part of that, but she's all about using dance and movement as a way to help liberate people. And she's constantly on the move, touring around. She has a book, and she just has a really transformative personality. So she's a go-getter. So what does she need, right? Well, I mean, this sort of lifestyle of being a mother and going on tour and all these things, what she really needs, and also running a business, she needs sustainability, right? Both in terms of money and energy. She also needs a long-term plan. Like, she's at that point where she's ready to kind of like see things in terms of like 10, 20, 30 years, right? She also really needs a strong brand. So those are the top 3 needs, and I could mention a few extras here. Like, she needs a support circle. She also needs an operational partner. So she needs somebody to like do a lot of the like heavy lifting of like the business stuff, so that she can stay in her zone of genius, which is like facilitating and being on stage. And she needs to just figure out how to travel and stay super grounded. So how does she get those things? So for her top 3 needs, number 1, to get sustainability, she needs an operational roadmap, right? She really needs a method and a system and a vehicle to move forward with that she can rely on, and know that that everything's gonna be like clean and tidy and have its place, and that's gonna create sustainability for her. Next up is she needs a long-term plan. So a solution is just to help her clarify her business vision, right? And so lesson or episode 2, which is vision, would be perfect for her. So she also needs a strong brand. So a solution is a brand strategy, identity, an identity system, and brand materials, right? So whether she wants to hire me to do it for her, or if she wants to like just learn my approach, those are both available. She can learn for free through this whole series. So that's Jennifer. And okay, here's the did I forget somebody? Nope, did not forget anybody. Okay, so that's Jennifer. So here's the last one, is my future self. This is kind of like where I see myself ultimately going at this point in time, or at least when I did this a couple months ago. So I'm going to be actually really going and refining this with the collab group throughout the week. So this guy, Luca Brown, I'm calling him the philosopher. So he's in his 40s. He's married. He lives in Sedona. He's an author, speaker, educator, and a magician. He's really into, he's an occult author basically, and he's doing really well for himself, making about $110K a year. So what's his journey? So his journey is that he had some mystical experiences as a child, and that led to a lifelong interest in the occult and different esoteric studies, spirituality and whatnot. So he's a super prolific writer. Like, dude has written a ton of books, ton of blog posts. He's got a lot to say. He's also a really popular podcaster, and he leads workshops and classes, and really like what he's all about and what he really does in his work is he's utilizing magic and occultism for positive cultural transformation. That's, he believes that that this work is vital for the evolution of human consciousness, and I tend to agree with him. So he's also a very humble and selfless type of person. Okay, so what does Luca Brown need in his journey? What does he need to take his next steps and to get to where he wants to go? So he needs devoted students, which is to say he needs a resonant audience. He needs a strong brand. He needs networking. He needs R&R and like energetic sustainability. So, you see there's a lot of these themes that keep coming up. Is this idea of like, strong brand and sustainability, et cetera, all things that I am equipped to help them with. He also needs good PR. He needs support, and he also needs passive income and a long-term plan. He's kind of like, he's completely maxed out as to like his creative output. Like he's reached his limit of income based on like his current approach and strategy. So what he needs to figure out how to do is how to unhook his time from his income a little bit and start to get some passive income flowing. And he needs a long-term plan. So what are his solutions? So he needs devoted students. So solution is to create ongoing training courses and programs, right? He needs to have something always going on for students to work with and to develop a community. He needs a strong brand. So how does he get that? Through the seed process, developing identity system, basically through Brand Alchemy is how he does that. I'll just put that there. Networking. So he needs to go to counterculture conferences, right? If he's not already. How does he get R&R? Well, retreats. And that's not him like hosting retreats. It's him going to a retreat. Good PR. So he needs strong positioning and a press kit, better press kit. Support. So how does he do that? Through some sort of a guild or a mastermind, right? Which is to say the collab. So you can kind of see I've already created the answers to a lot of these needs, right? So how does he create passive income? Creating online courses and memberships, or a membership, right? And what does he do to create a long-term plan? As vision and roadmap. Boom. So that's like the snapshot of my audience. And what that does for me is it gives me a great amount of clarity and empathy for the people that I'm serving, right? Which is you. And so it's interesting that, I'd be love to know, like, did any one or more of these profiles resonate with you, or did you see yourself in them in any way? I would love to hear if that's true for you. Oh, Don Healy. Hey, Don. So good to see you here. It's been a while. So that's it with the audience map and the personas or the profiles. So the next steps is that's the wrong one. Here we go. Next steps. So your next steps is to create your audience map and create your personas. It's literally like what I just showed you might seem like a little overwhelming at first, but here's the thing is that all it takes is 20 minutes to create your map and 20 minutes each for the profiles or the personas. That's 2 hours. That's 2 hours, and what you're going to get out of that is a deeper understanding and clarity as to who your audience is and how you can serve them. And that is super duper valuable. It's worth way more than the 2 hours that it takes to do the thing. I also want to mention too, it's really can be really useful to do this with somebody else. it's all, even if they don't even know anything about what you do, it doesn't matter. It's just having somebody to reflect and bounce ideas with is super, super helpful. So if you want to follow along, and I recommend that you do, this is your next steps. And when you do these two things, then you will have clarified your audience, and you will have created, well, and if you're following along with the whole series and actually doing the work, then at the end of this, we'll have vision, essence, and audience down. And that leaves us with the final aspect of the seed, which is action. And that is our focus for next week. And once we have our seed down, which will be wrapped up at the end of this month, we will move on to the next phase, which is the root, which gets into your identity and aesthetic and all that kind of fun, creative stuff. So anyways, thank you so much for joining me today. And I really hope that you got something out of this transmission. We're going to do a Q&A here in just in a moment. If you have any questions, please ask right now. Any questions, anything you'd like to get help with. It could be about audience or it could be about anything. But now's a perfect moment to get some help. And I'd like to just mention the collab. So this is the sort of membership / workshop group that I've created that is basically, it's based around a weekly session that we have every Tuesday. It's a 2-hour session, and we apply all this work in a group, co-creative, collaborative environment. And we're really working together to grow our brands and our things. So if that sounds like something interesting to you, we're doing it by application. And I don't have an application form set up quite yet. That's going to be coming with my website, which will be coming in the next couple weeks. But if you want to reach out to me and just have a chat about it and see if it's the right fit, just hit me up at my email, which is andy@opulentcreative.com. So, okay, we have a couple questions here. So Don says, where can I find the previous content? That's a good question. So if you go to my Facebook page, Andy Freeland, if you click the videos section, you'll see all the recordings there. Or you can go to my YouTube channel and you'll see I have a playlist set up. I will I'll post the link to all of these in the comments here when I'm not able to post in the comments quite yet. I can just read them right now. So I'll make sure you get that done. And if you guys want to like stay up to date, actually the best way to subscribe is on my YouTube channel, because if you subscribe there, you'll get notifications every time I go live. And I think it's just a much more suitable and more focused environment than here on Facebook, but whatever floats your boat. I'm streaming everywhere. Okay, so Daniel Herrera says, foundation persona. Was this tuning into the persona that you felt had your back? Or okay, so let's talk about that. So when I learned this specific approach, I learned this from my friend Jose Caballero, who basically made up this entire system, right, that I'm using for audience. And a lot of the seed stuff that we're learning here, I learned from him. Super brilliant genius of a human. But anyways, the foundation is like, it's kind of what I like to think of is that it's like a foundational figure, like a rock, kind of like somebody that's like always been there for you in some way. It's like a supporter. It's not necessarily like an audience member so much. It could be more like a collaborator. And that's the way I was kind of thinking about it, was like in my mind, the persona that I created for this, which is right here. This is the stand-in for everybody I've ever collaborated with, from like artist to artist, right? So this is kind of a stand-in for my partner that I created Audio Alchemy with, Steve Young, Headflux. It's also some recent collaborators. Yeah, so that's who it is for me. It's basically, and that person, that creative collaborator is a foundational aspect in my journey, if that makes sense. So however that might show up to you, it's just kind of like, what's a character that is currently or has been through time a foundational kind of rock for you. So I hope that helps clarify. And then on the flip side of the foundational is the let's go up, is admiration. So it's kind of like, this is somebody you look up to. You know, they're also not necessarily your audience, but they're involved just because of, you know, yeah, you look up to them, it's relevant to your work, and you hope that maybe they would one day be an audience member, which is why we'd include them here. So, Daniel, does that answer your question? Hopefully it does. So, it looks like that's all the questions that came in. If last chance if anybody has any questions. Otherwise, we will wrap it up, and we'll be back next week for action, which is where the rubber meets the road and we start making things happen. So again, thank you guys so much for joining me and offering up your attention for, looks like it's been about almost an hour and a half. So great. Well, thank you guys so much. It's always a great time for me, and yeah, this is one of my favorite parts of the week. So I'll see you next week. Thank you so much, and yeah, to be continued. Have a great day, everybody.